it's.
Do you agree in principle, if we have crimes with no punishment, would it increase the crime, decrease the crime, or it will remain the crime rate the same? If there are crimes and there is no punishment associated with this crime, my question to you is threefold. Would it increase the crime, decrease the crime, or neutral, it doesn't increase or decrease the crime?
I don't understand your question. What do you mean
Imagine
increase
now
and decrease?
a crime is about murder. Murder. Someone murders someone. If there is no punishment of murder in a society, would murder increase, decrease, or remain the same?
Okay, so what is the punishment is a deterrent to the behavior? Is
No,
what
no.
you're talking about?
Essentially, you will come to. But do you agree? Crime without it associate punishment is not going to make the society any better. Society to thrive and function,
Crime
you
is-
need.
sorry, yeah, but it depends whether the punishment is in this life or in the afterlife.
No, I'm
They
talking
could
about
be-
this life.
Yeah, but
This
they-
life.
But there's not.
This life.
Yeah,
In a
but-
practical level, take the example of murder. If somebody commits murder, one person, two person, whole community, all the black people murdered, all the Chinese murdered, all the white people murdered, all the Bengalis murdered, whatever, right? If murder takes place and there is no associated punishment, my question to you to explore, would murder as a crime increase, decrease, or remain the same?
It would increase.
It would increase. Agree. Anyone disagree with her?
No, but
No,
Why-
you don't agree with me?
Everyone agrees with you.
Oh, they agree with me.
I said anyone disagree, disagree. The reason why, because those people who have something in their heart, a feeling against other person, they will murder that person because there is no accountability, there is no consequence, there is no punishment, there is no deterrent. That is why if there was a punishment associated with it, it will make this into a check. Either stops it altogether, minimizes it, or decreases the crime. It will never increase. That's why Islam, Camille,
yeah. But I understand
do you agree now in Christianity, because there is no punitive penal system, it doesn't have a practical solution to decrease crime.
Well, the practical solution, which I think actually Islam also agrees with, that ultimately it's not about the world.
No, it's about this world.
It's not- yeah, it's about
ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Oh Lord, give us the good in this world and in the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of hellfire. So, as Muslims, we follow how to live our life in this world as best as we can with justice, fairness, compassion, mercy, truthfulness, and also think about our ultimate abode in the hereafter. We don't just simply become ascetic, go into a mountain cave and live like a what's called an ascetic. We don't do that. So Islam caters the need of this world as well as the need of the hereafter. In Christianity, as we say, because it doesn't cater for a practical solution to the practical problems of this world, here or in an Amazonian jungle community, or 2 billion years later, if the world was still alive, people to remain there, in the absence or the lack of a practical solution, Christianity cannot be universalized religion, and that is why it cannot be a true religion that you are talking about. That is why Islam, which claims to be the finality of religion, the complete religion, the religion which is for all times and all places, it becomes the one for people to reflect on, to accept. Camille, do you agree?
Well, wait, hang on. Agree with what, the fact that
Christianity doesn't have a practical solution to adultery.
Yeah, but so, as we were saying at the beginning, it's not because a religion has all of the answers to a practical solution that it makes it.
It's not about a religion which claims to be from God to be a final religion. It must have a solution. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, so for instance, if you take all the examples that you gave, there's no Christian that would advocate for, adultery, murder, or any, they are practical.
How do we deal with them? So when someone commits an adultery in a Christian family today, what is the solution of this problem?
In the UK, you still abide by the law of the land, right? You abide by the law.
Every Muslims are striving to establish the law of God on this earth. It's not just in Saudi Arabia or in Pakistan, in this world. It was implemented at one time, but it got dismantled because of internal or external
Because it was
Yeah,
a
but
bad
the
idea.
things.
Yeah,
But we are striving to bring it back because we know that's what the solution
It's
is.
ultimately bad
In the
ideas.
meantime, we are contracted in certain countries to be what? Faithful to the contracts that we have. But that doesn't mean we consider to be this is the best solution. We know what the solution is. We're striving towards it. That is the solution. Christianity doesn't have a solution. Instead, the solution it has is one about what?
It does,
That
I mean-
you let the adulteries go free.
But it has, so if you go to the Vatican, for instance, right, which is a city.
Right?
say-
Camille, just want to answer the heckler's point. An adulterous woman came. Adulterous woman came, right? People
my
brought her
goodness.
to be
Oh my
punished.
goodness.
Guess what Christ did?
Okay.
There was a law that was beforehand.
Righty.
If anyone commits adultery, you should stone her to death, right? Okay. So what did Christ do? As a judge, as a man appointed on earth to implement God's law, did he implement the law that was
I'm
given by
sorry,
God earlier?
Christ
Did
was
he
not
stone
here
her to death?
implement God's law.
Did he
Christ is
implement
the
the laws of
fulfillment
God?
Of the law. Don't forget that.
Christ
And don't
came
forget
with
that
the
he
law of
told
God.
her
Christ
to
came
go
to
and
say,
sin no more.
"Oh, our Lord,
So
who are-"
Christ came here to free us from
Camille,
the burdens of sin.
do
Don't
you
forget that,
remember-
Mansour.
I'm not speaking to him now, I'm speaking
Yes,
to
you
you.
were, Mansour.
Do you remember
Okay? Don't
Lord's
run from
Prayer?
me, Mansour. I'm right here.
Your kingdom
Oh,
come.
right. So
Thine
now-
will
now
be
you've
done.
Moved on.
Thine
This
will
is
be done.
the Lord's Prayer.
The
Got
will
it.
of God
Ho-
to
hop
be
in,
done.
Mansour. Froggy Mansour.
Where?
Love it.
On earth.
As it is in
Right.
heaven.
So Christ, if he's here as a representative of God, whether as a prophet,
That's
a
not
warner,
what
or a
he's here
messenger,
for. He's here as God on earth, not representative. He's
he
here as God.
he needs to implement the
No,
law
he
when a
came here to
crime
free
is
us from
committed.
sin.
Imagine now.
Show me
Okay,
anywhere
imagine.
in the Bible where it says Christ
Imagine
came
God.
here to implement the
I want
law.
you to have a
There
thought
you go.
experiment.
Okay, I'm just going
Come
to
this
leave and
way.
have you.
Yeah,
No, I'm not talking to him. Camille, I'm not speaking to him.
I'll come in. No
Camille,
worries, no worries.
if you
No.
find it's
If you
distracting,
wanna tag
you
out,
need to
let
tell
me
him
know.
off.
Let me just. Where did
Tell him
that
off
come
if it's distracting. If God came on earth, brother, one second, try to understand one thing. Imagine God in a certain belief system came on earth and there were crimes being committed. Camille, are you going to be dictated by your conversation?
Should we time it 2 minutes?
Camille,
No.
are you going to be
Let me
dictated?
actually talk to him. We'll
Yeah.
come back to that.
Go.
Okay, so you were saying.
I think it's right time you tell him off not to interfere with your discussion.
I think it's right time that we tell you off, Master, for talking too much. Keep
Wait.
quiet for a second.
If it's distracting, we can have another time. Right. So the scenario I am illustrating, if God came on earth in a belief system and there are crimes being committed, crimes of murder, rape, and so on and so forth, right? Stealing. Let's take the three examples. Murder, rape, and stealing. God on earth, he comes here and he says, I am not going to do any implementation of punishment. That's not my job. That's not my role. That's not my mission. What he's going to do? He's going to let them go and say, you know what? You punish them according to your secular laws, not my laws. Does that make sense? Would it make sense if God was to do things like that?
Yeah, but ultimately, secular laws. Are
No,
also
think about it.
No, but-
God on earth, imagine now God on earth, right? There's God over there on earth.
But I
He's-
don't believe that.
No. Just to understand the scenario that Christians are bringing. God is over there. Everyone knows he's God, let's say for the sake of argument, and people are stealing, raping, killing people, right? Now, these criminals, what's going to happen to them? God on earth doesn't do anything. In fact, people then, instead of going to God, God, what I'm going to do? Are you going to punish them or not? God, without any information from God, they go to Caesar. They go to this leader, that king. Would that make any sense?
My kingdom is not of this earth.
Would that make any sense?
I think it could make sense.
I have a
eventually.
question for you.
Can we take that question if you don't mind?
Well,
She's not a heckler. Not on my list.
I don't know much about Muhammad, but so Muhammad, if he was on earth and somebody did something, Muhammad would punish them?
Not himself. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being, when he was a state leader, there would have been a system of governance, laws and for punishment and crime. And based on that, being a statesperson,
But Muhammad wouldn't punish them.
no. I'm answering. Not individually, because he has established a state in which there will be a judge. There will be a judge in which the crime will be established, and then the punishment on an established criminal will be implemented.
But don't you think that's the same in Christianity? Because they have we have, I'm non-religious, by the way. Used to be a Catholic, so, but so we have the Ten Commandments that we shouldn't do these things, so don't you think it's a similar, similar thing?
It's not similar. I would wish it was like that, but it's not in practical level. So the practical level, if someone now commits adultery,
Right.
having sexual relations outside marriage,
Right.
Christianity does not offer a punishment for this criminal behavior.
It's okay, so let's just say right here in England, let's just say right here in England, and a woman, a Muslim woman commits adultery, you're going to stone her to death in England?
No, I'm not asking for what
don't
punishment.
think so.
I'm saying, according to the law of God, how does the law of God take care of instability in a society?
How are you going to do that here?
No, it's not me in
I'm
mine.
asking you a question. I mean,
The answer is this.
Yes.
Christianity does not offer a solution.
But neither does the Muslim religion in England.
We have a solution. No,
England.
in England, Muslims
And
are
you're
not in
England.
power.
You're not in,
Muslims-
I'm truthfully curious. I really am.
Muslims are not in power in a legislative sense in England,
Right.
where they do not implement Islamic law
Right.
and implement crime and
There is a
punishment
little
system.
bit of Islamic law here. A little
Not in the legislative body.
But
This
so-
country is not run by Sharia law.
Yes.
So because of the absence of the Sharia law, Muslims cannot expect the adulterers to be punished in the Islamic way, because it's not run by Islamic law. It's a secular country. But if you have a country in which they implement Islamic law, they can implement the punishment to an adulteress. So the question we were talking about,
Do you think in this day and age now that most Muslim men, I don't know how many are here, would want a woman to be stoned to death?
the question is not about the modality of punishment. The question is about whether there is a punishment and can it be implemented to stabilize the society. Islam as a holistic, to give you an example, can I? And then I'll come back to Kamil. Okay. Islam gives a system of, for example, you cannot steal, because stealing is taking away the rights of another person.
Right.
And stealing carries, after it's established that this person didn't have a need to steal, and it was secured under lock and key, and he broke or she broke that lock and key and stole it. It wasn't like hanging off £1 million on the back pocket and walking in the public. It wasn't like that. It was from a safe, locked under lock and key, and it was all the security measures. The one who stole, he was not a billionaire with no need. He was not someone who was like a poor person with a need, and so on and so forth, right? All of that things, and once crime is established, this person will be punished by cutting off the hands.
Right.
Right. Now, if it is established that this person stole a bread from a supermarket because they were dying of starvation, no food, no neighbor offered food for him to live, no state as a body gave him this food, the punishment of cutting the hands would not be applicable, cannot be applied. Anyone disagree? Anyone disagree? Raise your hands.
Probably can
Look
be,
around.
actually.
Okay, how many Muslims are there? Raise your hands.
How many what?
Muslims.
Oh.
And how many of you disagree? No one. Why?
I disagree,
Because he's
how
not a
would you
Muslim.
establish that the person
So now,
only stole
as you
because
realize,
nobody gave them
there
bread?
are conditions.
Technically,
You can
anybody
ignore him, he's a
can make that
heckler.
argument. But
There
how
are-
would you know if it was true?
there are
Do you need
conditions-
4 witnesses, 12,
With
20?
certain
I
things
cannot.
because-
I'm trying to answer you,
I-
but
I
he's
understand
distracted.
what you're saying. I understand
So,
what you're saying.
there are conditions which needs to be met before punishment is implemented. But the fact of the matter is, when the system of governance is in place, it cannot be only crime and punishment. It has to be holistic. Education system, social system, moral system, all of that. Because people need to be
Go to university,
people
by
need
the
to be
way,
educated
just
that
saying.
stealing is wrong. You cannot punish someone without telling them stealing is wrong.
But don't we, as a society, I mean, given religion different, everybody knows you shouldn't steal,
But
whether you're religious or not
but
religious.
but the issue is not everyone steals.
Right.
So those who steal, we need to deal with them to prevent them from stealing your money, your house, your jewelry. We need to stop doing that, because you have your right of your own property. That should not be.
You don't think the laws of the land are enough?
They're not sufficient. That's why Islam has a complete solution. So if you turn to Camille. So the example I've given you demonstrates Christianity of today doesn't have the foundational principles of being an universal religion.
Let's come back to the specific prescriptions of the religion maybe in the future discussion. But I wanted to come back actually to a completely different topic.
Sure.
Your wages are going to get tough if you carry on doing
All right.
Okay, everyone, pay attention.
Back on track. Back on
Pay attention, everyone, to Camille. Brother,
Guys, go away.
don't speak to a heckler.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I was waiting for that.
About time you implemented the law.
All right. Anyways, so the thing I'm actually interested in right now is like the evidence for Islam, right? So we talked about last time. We talked about the prophecies, the miracles, and we talked about the
Why aren't there evidence for Islam?
what's that?
Why are they not evidence for Islam?
Yeah. So one you said.
Take care.
So I mean,
Before you go, sorry, before you go. Just 1 second, sorry. We would, from the bottom of our heart, invite you to look into Islam and accept Islam, become a Muslim, which is surrendering yourself to the will of God.
I don't believe in any religion.
It's not about religion, it's about knowing the one who created you and thanking and being grateful to that creator. Because you and I know I did not create the universe.
Right,
Neither did you.
yeah.
So it's to be thankful and grateful to that creator of ours. And we say this is the one who is worthy of our worship.
Well, I'm interested in all religions, to be
Yeah.
honest.
So
I
this is
totally am.
so
You
the
know,
one who's
I'm
worthy
open
of
to
our
everything.
worship. The one who's worthy of our worship is the one that we are asking you to embrace him and follow the law and the will and the guidance to that, and that is Islam. If you didn't know much about it, I'm sure my friends and my brothers and sisters are more than willing to explain to you because I'm engaged here, not engaged in the sense, but in a conversation.
I'll come back next Sunday and see what
And
you're
we can
talking
have
about.
talk discussion. But please speak to my brothers and my sisters over there. Right?
Bye.
You take care. Until then.
Also, I would like to say, by the way, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking that time with me. I really appreciate it. And despite all the heckling
Sorry.
going on, it's an enjoyable discussion personally. I think I'm doing that genuinely in the spirit of truth. I'm not here to cut anyone down. I'm just really interested in what you've got to say. I will push back if I don't, what I think you're saying doesn't make sense to me. But
Would you be interested if you didn't have any counter back?
Yeah, exactly.
If you agreed with everything, you would be Muslims by all of them. But at the end of the day, we would like you to become a Muslim, and that's why I'm willing to take your pushbacks and try to answer them as you go along.
All right, so I wanted to come back to prophecies, as in the actual kind of evidence for Islam.
Yeah.
If you take away the prescriptions and stuff like that. So there's, prophecies and miracles don't really speak to me in general. Like I think, and that also applies to biblical miracles, by the way. Like I don't think that those are particularly,
Sure.
I don't really resonate with that. But just for sake of argument, one point that you mentioned last time, you mentioned this book of 500 miracles that the Prophet did.
I said 300 miracles. Yeah.
300, sorry. But the Quran itself states, I think, several times that there were no signs given to Muhammad.
No, this is what we explained before as well. This is what the Quranic picture of what a miracle is. Anytime miracle is sent, people in their habitual nature, they disbelieve in the miracles. So God says, "Ma mana'aka." Nothing has prevented me from sending miracles except the people of the past disbelieve in them. So in general, God is not willing to provide miracles and miracles to make people believe, because people in their nature, they disbelieve in the miracles. So even when he sends miracles, they keep on disbelieving in it. That's point number one. Point number two, God does not give in to people's demand of miracles. They say, okay, you know what? Give me a mountain of gold, I will believe, for example. He's not going to give in to this kind of miracles because these are silly claims people want to make, even if it was there, because the Quran says, even if there were mountains of gold, stairs going up to heaven, the dead were to speak, they will still not believe. Because belief is not just what they're demanding miracles for as a belief, it's something which is in their heart, the stubbornness and arrogance and pride, and many of their psyche, the ego, that's the problem, not about the evidence. So Quran does not in any way say, oh, Prophet Muhammad was not going to be given any miracles. The Quran says miracles is a matter of time. but it will never be given according to their dictates. And the Quran says that when the miracles are given, the ayats are given, the example I've given you about the splitting the moon, وَإِذَا رَأَى, when they see this sign, they say this is a magic, perpetual magic and so on. So miracles were performed by the Prophet. The Quran does not somehow say no, it didn't. The Quran affirms that was the case, but people's reaction is it's magic, and the Quran reprimands them, like what's there for you not to believe? You see it with your own eyes and you disbelieve. So these are the people that really we're going to have a good accountability in the hereafter, because seeing something in front of their eyes which it cannot be accounted for as a natural thing that people do, like magic and things like that. Some people learn this trick. When they could see clearly, if you and I were there and the sea parted by the staff of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Camille, are you going to just say, let me rub my eyes? What am I saying? Am I having some kind of delusions with some narcotic gas? You're not going to see that. You see that in front of your face. This is called Ainul Yaqeen. This is your truth, reality of your own eyes. You saw that in your own eyes. You are not going to question like, oh, this didn't happen. That will be an evidence against you at that point if you didn't believe in it. So when miracles do happen, and some people just disbelieve in them by saying this is a magic, like they did with Christ and they did with Moses, these people will really have no excuse in the day of judgment. In that judgment day, they will have to account, okay, here, that was an evidence in front of you. Why did you disbelieve and reject the evidence? What are they going to say? Oh, I was deluded? Because there will be no counter back. There will be no pushback from them because they cannot argue against it. Because you could not explain that this was not a miracle performed by a prophet and a messenger. That's what we're talking about. Quran affirms miracles of the Prophet. And one of the examples I gave you, the Quran clearly says, is about splitting the moon. When they see, وَإِذَا رَأَوْا, when they see, they see that.
Again, the Quran does
Ignore
not
the
say
heckler. I'm not.
that.
No, don't even
In
listen
fact,
to the heckler.
Commentators say that that's a sign of the end times, not Muhammad doing it. So
Look,
actually, you're right, Camille.
Camille,
There
here.
is nowhere in the Quran where it says that
So
Muhammad
this
did
is
a miracle.
this is the chapter
When it
here.
talks about the miracles of Musa, of Isa, even Abraham, but not Muhammad. In Surah 54, verse 1. And now the
To
time
me,
has
that
come.
the splitting, I don't.
Our junior and the moon did rent asunder. It's
But what
happened,
Muhammad did?
right?
Nowhere. You could even read Tafsir al-Quran
This-
by Sayyid Maldudi.
I'm not gonna take this example out of thin blue.
Muhammad.
Historical event, and
It hasn't happened yet.
when they see a miracle, they turn aside and they say transient magic.
Where's Muhammad 9 times?
وَكَذَّبُوا, and they call a lie and they disbelieve. This is in past tense, and follow their Lord desires, and their affair has to be appointed time. So when they saw this,
Lying on the Quran.
they called it magic and they disbelieved in it.
Yeah, but he's got a point in that Muhammad.
What?
It's
Where's
not-
Muhammad? I don't see him.
It's not a performed specifically by Muhammad.
Hang on. Who did this miracle?
Well, according to Sayyid Maldudi,
No. In here,
a Indian, I
during the
believe,
time of the Prophet,
Quran
the
commentator
Quran was given
of
to
the
him,
20th
right?
century,
And he's
That is a sign
doing that.
of the difference.
Now what we're going to do is, we're going to be so hyper-skeptical, we're going to say the Prophet didn't exist, he didn't say this, all the hadith
Now
are
you're
not,
committing
try to
fallacy.
understand,
I like it.
the hadith that talks about that this is a historical event that took place like this nature, this is the reaction of his people,
the hadith
we're
comes
going to
20 years
disbelieve,
later, so
exactly, see,
can't
hadith
try to
came
force
later,
Wait a
Quran
minute.
came later. How much are we going to dismantle this skepticism
that's
of
what you
the historians which are known as revisionists? Revisionism is a school of thought in historical criticism in which they try to reject all of the historical details and say, maybe he didn't exist, maybe the people didn't exist, maybe Mecca didn't exist. Do you know that?
Yeah.
They're even talking about saying Mecca didn't exist. Subhanallah, the Prophet didn't exist. So what do we say about these people? The hyper-skeptic revisionist, you are against the historical memory of the people, going against the data. We have historical data of a place, of the people, and their artifacts, and their beliefs, and their systems, and their writings. All of it. How much do you want? Writings after writing, in inscriptions, in papyri, in writings and later works. No sane historian would doubt, for example, Prophet Muhammad existed and he preached in Arabia and he had this kind of belief about him. No sane one. Hyper-skeptic, revisionist, fruitcakes may believe in that. Just like hyper-skeptic revisionist fruitcakes believe Jesus did not exist.
Yeah.
Oh, he accepts Jesus doesn't exist because
he didn't claim to be God.
Camille,
Don't engage with them now.
That's
Let's
fine.
look
Come
into
to me
me.
about it.
you're right. You're right. I'm corrected.
You can't help me.
We
You can't help me.
agree there are Christians, because of this consistency approach, they will say, because we have a historian who doubts the existence of Christ, Christ didn't exist. They need to be consistent. So now maybe that is the view. Christianity didn't exist. All of these writings, come on,
Additionally,
doesn't matter.
there are
Do you see
some
the point?
fruitcakes
So
that
that's
Christ
why we
crucified.
call them fruitcakes, because these are hyper-skepticism. They go against history. So when it comes to
Wait a
miracles,
second.
when it comes to
About bringing
miracles,
up this history, what happens when the Quran says that Christ was crucified? Isn't that being a fruitcake?
Hey, my conversation with them. Stop it.
Go for it, but it's
No
interesting.
way.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. No worries.
you understand English. She said, go away.
No, say it in Arabic, Mansour, please.
She said, go
Say it
away.
in Arabic, Mansour. Appreciate it.
Go away.
Carry on.
She said, go away, not me.
Okay, stop it.
She said, go away.
No problem. Go for it.
She said, go away.
Alright, fine. Sorry, you were saying.
He has no respect for you.
It's okay, but that's what hecklers do. I'm sure there's,
Right. I agree that you've understood. Now we're on the same boat, that you agree that he's a heckler. Good. So now we move on. So
But to say, there's probably, I don't know about...
So that book about 300 authentic miracles, you, in your mind, is this. The Quran denies the miracle performed by the Prophet ﷺ, so how can he have done miracles? As I explained to you, the Quran does not deny. The Quran denies what thing? Miracles as expected by people, demanded by people. God doesn't give in to these kind of things. God gives his own miracle. And that's why you will find within the Christian text, there's one point Christ said, I think I mentioned this before, no sign will be given to you except the sign of Jonah. So Christ himself make a condition. I'm not going to give you all the signs that you demand. Do this, do that, whatever. Nothing will be given to you. No sign, except one sign. So here we have a consistency of the messengers in terms of how they deal with these kind of hecklers at their times, trying to give me evidence, give me evidence. They do not fall for their trap, right? And their ego business of, give me something I will believe. In fact, they would not believe. So the Quran tells us that this is a miracle. The Quran, it says itself consists of evidence, ayat. Every single verse, we don't use the word verse, but you know what a verse is, a sentence, is called an ayah of the Quran. An ayah is a miracle, a sign, a proof, an evidence, all of that. Quran itself, in its individual component, is called a miracle.
Yes, I want to come back to that because that's probably, actually, of all the things that we talked about, that's the only thing, probably the one that speaks to me the most is the inimitability of the Quran. I think it's because I'm a linguist.
Did you watch ChatGPT?
I did. It was really interesting. Yeah. I need to do more research on this.
Please do.
Yeah. You mentioned actually in that video, you mentioned the series of lectures that you did on the and I couldn't find those. So I don't know.
So the lectures are called I'll show you which ones so you can listen to them. There's 3 parts, 3 lectures in 3 occasions. So let's see which ones they're called in Dawah Wise. I mean, what it will save me from giving you all the information that I did in three parts, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's called Linguistic Miracle of the Quran.
Okay.
These 3 parts in Dawah Wise. Yeah?
Okay, all right.
Okay. So originally it was uploaded in a different one, so that's fine.
So yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail on that, but that's probably out of all the things that I've heard, that's the only one that I can't. Watching your video was actually really interesting, and I think it's probably in the visual mind of actually learning Arabic and understanding how it works. So I can't really debate that, but the superficial understanding that I have is that it might have been because the Quran was actually influenced by other languages like Syriac or that kind of stuff. Is there anything to that? Is that something you addressed in the lectures?
Yeah, but the question is, we're talking about the Arabic language itself. Even though the Quran can have words of different linguistic origin, the fact remains the composition of such a way. It's not just individual vocabulary. Like for example, the word illiyin, the word sirat, they may have a cognate or something similar preceding the Arabic language, but the Quran can either use something from another linguistic culture and use it and Arabize it to the Arabic people for their understanding, because no need to reinventing wheel within the Arabic grammatical linguistic vocabulary structure, within the framework of the Arabic vocabulary, because you know how the words are derived. For example, the word globalization didn't exist in the Arabic corpus, but now what does it say in Arabic? Globalization? Awlama. The root words are ayn, lam, mim. Right. To know. Alima, ya'lamu, to know. And from this, like, you can have so many different meanings. Globalization, where you can have the world, and because of a root word, it can have meaning attached to it. For example, the word alaqa, the Quran says how human beings go through the stages of alaqa. And people say, oh, that's wrong, it doesn't mean that. But if you look at the word alaqa, in its root word means it's some connection, something that is hanging. So a mu'allaq, that you know, if you see some traditional places in my country or in our country, they make something with rope and so on, and they hang their pots and things on that. It's called mu'allaq, right? Alaqat, relationship, because we hang with each other, right? So each word can be derived from a root word. This is beauty of Arabic language, and of course probably Semitic language the same, right? So when it comes to the Quran and its linguistic miracle, of course the Quran brings in new terms which the Arabs didn't know them before, but it Arabizes them from the Arabic stock. So the word Quran itself, you'll be surprised, was not known to the Arabs what it meant. There is no pre-Islamic poetry which has the word Quran in it, because it didn't, this particular form, Quran, did not exist in their vocabulary. So the Quran introduced even the name of this book, which they're not familiar with, but something from a root word, qara'a, is meant to recite, to read, and so on, in that form. The word surah, a chapter, was not known to the people in this meaning. Surah was like a fence. But the Quran is introducing a meaning, and it describes suratun anzalna, and so on, and it tells you what it means, at the same time defines it. It has a border, a fence all around it, a thematic unity. The word ayah, verse, and ayah wasn't known to them in the meaning. To them, ayah had a different meaning. So the Quran introduces even the words with a newer meaning and explains and defines as it goes along. So the new language the Quran brings, which they couldn't have thought about, the Quran within its recitation, it explains it. So people didn't have, why are you speaking gibberish? You know, when a child speaks gibberish, after hearing few times, a mother or a father, a brother, sister, they know what it means. If you heard it first time, you didn't know what it means. The child speaks gibberish. The Quran came and spoke in a language which was unknown to them in the mind, but they understood. Not only that this is an eloquent way of expressing it, but they understood the meaning, and yet it wasn't in their vocabulary. That is the linguistic secrets of the Quranic language.
Yeah, so that I'll watch your videos and I'll come
Please
back to
do,
it.
please do.
But that, I mean, to me, that's the only one where everything else I'm kind of like, that doesn't really...
Contradictions. What about the contradiction claim? If the Quran was not from any other, if the Quran was not from God, it was from anyone else other than God, then you will find many ikhtilafan.
Yeah, well, that I never really quite understood that point, because to me there are lots of places that seem to contradict each other.
Do you agree in principle? A book from God talking about history, about future, about contemporary affairs, about secrets of your heart, about the natural world, about politics, anthropology, sociology, all these things, if a book from God is talking all about it, it should be free from errors and contradictions. Or should it be?
In principle, yes, but if it's been mediated through humans, then it's subject to errors.
No, first of all, in principle, this is what I'm asking, you expect a book of God should be free from errors. So when the Quran makes that claim that this is the Quran with all its forms of guidance on every aspect of life, it talks about embryology, it talks about astrophysics, it talks about biology, it talks about the ancient East and ancient West. If it wasn't from God, you expect it to be contradictory, erroneous, having lots of discrepancies. It's not that any book on any matter if it's free from contradictions from God. A phone book may be free from contradictions, but it doesn't make it from God. But the phone book does not talk about the ancient world and the future world and the humans and the natural world. If it did, then we expect it to contain mistakes.
But then on that point, then why would verses be abrogated then?
No, abrogation is of what? Abrogation, God says very clearly that ma nansakh min ayatin aw nunsiha. Is it how it goes? Anyone knows the ayah? We do not. What's the ayah? نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. Right? So, he does not abrogate or makes an ayah forgotten until he brings something better or similar to it. It's all about making the society in the, what's this called? Rehabilitating them and making them. So God can condition a society with a certain particular specific laws, and then he will say, that's fine, now we have different laws. Just like, say, a law of Adam alayhi salam and his children, how they had to, twin sets had to marry each other, human beings to procreate, because there wasn't another human being separately created and they married, because only one man and one woman, from them we all came. So the law of, for example, marrying sisters and brothers is now no longer applicable, but at that time it was okay. So God, for a community, he can instill and give guidance and laws, and he can say these are no longer necessary for now, but for future that is not
Well,
necessary.
then why would certain verses like the one about slavery not be abrogated then?
Could be slavery will be, as I said, certain laws can be there because it will take long time, as we explained before, to get it eliminated. Or slavery will be there such that it will be very difficult to eliminate, so that means conditions may be there and you need to have rules and regulations and solutions for it.
So we're getting new Quran verses like sometime in the future? The
Do you
abrogation
follow?
of it?
So God
Oh no.
Yeah, but
here is not abrogating slavery. This is a law. He is trying to encourage it to be eliminated through the processes and mechanism God has put in place.
Can God ever make a mistake?
What do you think?
I'm asking you in your
I will
opinion.
answer, but what do you think?
No. I'm asking your opinion of it.
I will answer.
So that's why I'm asking the
Mansur
question.
Sure.
can give answers.
Wait, hold
God will never make mistakes.
on. So God can never make a mistake.
Of course not.
Okay, so everything that we are going through right now, every error in the world, every disaster that we're going through, along with all the good, that's all part of God's plan. Is that what you're telling me, yeah?
I'm telling you, anything that happens, it happens with the will of God.
Yeah, I know. Listen, the will. I'm not really concerned about the will. I'm saying, is he aware? Is that part of
He's
the
aware.
plan? So there's no, everything's going to plan.
Nothing can go against his plan.
So
Everything
going to plan.
is going to his plan.
Right, so-
Nothing can go against the plan of God.
Right. So all of the disasters that are going on right now, that
Everything.
everybody is enduring,
Everything.
This
Yeah,
is part of God's plan.
Everything.
that's the
In
problem
order
with
to
evil.
do what? What's the process?
It's a bit worse than this one.
What's
So-
the end? What's the end?
Hang on.
What's the end?
What I want to understand is this. One second. Before I go into answering one question after like a series of questions.
Sorry,
No problem. I want to understand one thing.
Yeah.
What does that prove? That God doesn't exist?
What does what?
What does your questions prove? If there is evil in the world, what does it prove? If there is suffering, one second.
Yeah, go on.
If there is suffering in the world, if there is all this evil in the world, what does it prove? Does it prove that this non-existence of God?
No, I'm just trying to understand the logic of things, right? Because there is so many things happening, but you have to throw some sort of logic by it.
Yeah.
And if logic comes correct and you say there is no problems, there is no error, and God hasn't done...
It's not about error.
What I just said, has God ever made a mistake?
Let me come back to you again.
No, but
This
that's
is not about an error. This is not a human experiment that God has, in which human has a trial and error and God didn't know about it and God regretted it. What we're saying is God has given in this world, which is not utopia. This world is a place of test. There will be suffering. There will be these kinds of evils and things like this. There will be pain, but there will also be joy. There will be a contrast between good and evil, and you, acquainted with the faculty of choice, of knowing what is good and evil, you're obligated to fulfill your purpose in life by balancing these things and worshiping God, and then God will place you in a place of no evil, no pain, No suffering.
so
That's
going
paradise.
back to
Or you're not listening.
No,
You're formulating your question.
No, because we're
No,
not
stop,
going
stop,
so far
stop.
away from
No.
the point, and I wanna
When
go
you
back.
asked a question,
That was the point on
Yeah.
this actually. So the problem of evil, that, you know, when at the beginning I was saying I have things that I think Christianity and Islam don't have good answers to.
yeah.
The problem with evil is obviously one of them, right? It's a very famous kind of philosophical problem, whatever. So your point there is that because this world is a test, this life is a test. That's why there is evil in the world and suffering. So that makes sense. I would agree with that. But then, what do you make? What is the meaning of menial suffering, or, you know, for instance, animal suffering? So animals don't have an afterlife.
Say two animals fought with each other. One broke his horn or something like that. In the day of judgment, God will recompense them. God will recompense them.
But
Even animals.
Do animals have a soul in Islam?
Animals? What do you think? I don't think animals have souls.
Well, yeah, so
Animals,
so
do they have souls?
Yeah, so if they don't have souls, then how do they have an afterlife?
No. They don't have afterlife.
Okay, so
They
what
won't have
happens to them?
afterlife.
Okay, so
In a
what
day of judgment, if they have disputes like you're saying, questioning, oh, what are they going to do? Something has happened, like one animal violated another animal, whatever. Yes, they will be given, and that will be it. That's it.
But so then, what in this life then? What is
Because the
meaning
one
of animal
reward, perpetual life, is the human that's going to have. That is what is God created us for. So the animals and so on and so forth, these are all, in fact, Allah says in the Quran, everything here, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسِ, even the sun has been created to be subservient to us. وَالْقَمَرِ, and the moon. Everything of the creation that you see has been created for us to be our subservient, so that we can enjoy our life and fulfill our obligation in this life.
Okay, but fine. But if you take that, there are millions of years during which there were no humans on the planet, right? There are millions of years where there
I don't know if it's millions of years, but
yeah, at least
enough time.
100,000, whatever, enough time.
Yeah.
So what was the point of all that suffering that happened during that?
What do you mean by suffering?
Well, I mean,
God,
animals,
look,
okay, so
let's understand suffering again. When you say suffering, so when a lion eats a zebra or a deer, you're saying the zebra is suffering.
Yeah, pain, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pain. And you're saying that shouldn't be the case. So
Well, yeah.
the lion should have been created without any hunger or thirst.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what you're asking for
yeah, exactly.
is
So-
what will be
so-
provided in heaven, where you would not need to eat, but you will eat for pleasure.
Yeah, but precisely because I understand the point that you're making is that the meaning of pain and suffering for humans is that it's a test, it's to, you know, all that kind of stuff. Is what we're talking about. But for animals who don't get an afterlife, what's the point of their suffering?
Because
Their
they don't
pain?
have the spiritual necessity to have an enjoyment or punishment in the hereafter.
So by that-
God did not create them that way.
Yeah,
God
but then
created
what-
them, and that's it. So if, for example, if an animal were to have, okay, you know, something was violated against them in the day of judgment, that will be it, and that will be it. That's it. They will be like turned into a dust, and that will be it.
Yeah, I mean,
They don't need a continuous hereafter. This judgment is done between them, and that's it.
yeah, but then to me that's a difficult statement to reconcile with the fact that if you've got an animal that's suffering, not in a way that's like completely independent of a human being. Like,
In
I don't know,
no, I understand. When God gives His judgment, punishment and reward, nothing will be in such a way that will be called least of injustice. لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. He is not to the least unjust to His worshippers. So in the day of judgment, whatever recompense they have, everyone will be happy and content. You and I may disagree now. Oh, look, how can it be? How can a murderer, the victim, and the one who commit the criminal, at the end of the day, judgment, they will have some kind of judgment. The victim, himself, herself, or itself, will agree to the judgment that is given, and the consequence that follows will be content with it. That is what we're talking about, because God will not be unjust to any of those things that we're describing in terms of pain and suffering. To give an example, I think before, the person who was in hellfire, say for a long time, was just dipped into heaven for a fraction of a second. And God, this is in the hadith of our Prophet ﷺ. I'm not just making this up. Did you know anything about sorrow, pain, suffering? That person may have been there for millions of years in hellfire. One dip in heaven will say, no, I knew nothing of pain and suffering. Because this recompense, the compensation that is provided. To give you an example of compensation, someone stole your watch. The compensation, £1 billion. All the cars you want, all the money you want, all the land you want. You would not think about loss anymore about your watch. Now with this money, you can get hundreds and thousands of watches. The compensation God provides, as He confirms and if He affirms, will be to such a scale, no one can complain against God. They will be happy and content. That's the level of justice that we are saying God will provide. So we have firm faith in that. In terms of the actual mechanism, in terms of what's going to happen, that's the detail. But God has confirmed, لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ, for His worshippers or anyone, His slaves, He's not to the least unjust. Dhallam is like the highest oppressor, right? But He's not even to the least any of that. Because He is just al-adl. Not only adl, like justice. Sometimes Christians say God is love, and we say God is loving. In Islam, one of the attributes of God is al-adl, justice. Not just, but justice. Al-haq, truth. You say like someone is truthful, but Allah is al-haq, truth. So yes, there are certain attributes in which the adjective is used in such a way rather than, say, a noun. Yeah? Just to demonstrate the grievousness of these concepts and attributes. So the problem of evil is only a problem to the atheists and the Christians because their theodicy is such that they may have to explain it in that way. In Islam, we believe Allah is wise as well as someone who is well-wisher of any good, like He is the one who is the source of all truth. Because of His wisdom, that is why He even says, for example, you see the good and the bad, the one who sees and the one who doesn't see, how can you judge equally? The contrast is there for us. Would you know what is happiness if you didn't know anything about pain? You would not appreciate in its full depth what is really. You see, when we suffer pain and then we have happiness before or after, we appreciate more. So the appreciation is in contrast.
Yeah, I think
that is why in this world you have that contrast.
That makes sense.
In heaven, there is no contrast. Pure joy, pure happiness, no suffering, no, sorrow, no grief.
But that makes sense because you've got the afterlife, so it makes sense for humans, but it doesn't make sense for animals.
As I said, the animals, they will have their recompense and their compensation that they will have. And even if that is the end of it, because God's plan, look, God could have, okay, one thing I want to ask you. Why do you expect God to make you live forever and forever? Why would you expect God to create you and give you a life of eternity with no end? Why? It's God's choice. He could create you and that's it. So He could create animals and that's it. They're only a mechanism in this life, how we understand and how we develop ourselves.
Yeah, animals die and suffer.
Yeah, but I'm saying all of that has a compensation. People get killed, are compensated.
But the recompense is the afterlife.
No, I'm saying they do not have to have a continuous means of afterlife in which they have to live forever within the animal kingdom and so on and so forth. If their existence is annihilated and only thing is there, like if you wish something, I want to eat the meat of a bird and the bird is now created, comes up to you and then you eat of that meat and so on and so forth. But they do not have to have. If you want, for example, I'm sure, if you want, I want a pet dog in hereafter. This is your wishes. If that doesn't contradict anything of God, I'm sure it will be granted. But we don't go into all of these details if the guidance from Islam is silent about it. Like somebody says, I want to play football, I want to win. And he says, I want to win too in the match. Well, that cannot be granted. Why? Because you're generating contradictions. In heaven, there cannot be contradictions. There cannot be conflict of will. People say, look, in the Quran or in Islamic teaching, you believe everything that you wish will be granted. So you say, I want to play against Mansur, and I want to win, and Mansur wants to win. How can you win a game? Both cannot win. So this kind of wishing would not be given. Contradictions, logical impossibility will be removed.
Well, I guess, so is it that?
And I gave an arbitrary example. There could be many examples where you generate contradictions, you create a very incoherent picture. What we are saying, the Quran tells you there will not be any ill feelings, any grief, and so on and so forth. That means our human psyche will be transformed in such a way in which you would not wish where there will be generation of conflict of will, where
I mean,
logical
the whole
impossibilities
point of
arise.
free will, I feel, is almost-
Logical impossibilities
Yeah,
would not
yeah.
arise in heaven.
But then, yeah, so I feel it's like one last point on that possible evil, and I feel then I probably need to call it for a day. But again, but on that, so animals versus human, right? There's like a clear distinction between the two. Humans have souls, go to heaven, or to hell, but afterlife. Animals don't. But that is at odds with the fact that there's a continuum of evolution, and I'm not talking about necessarily the theory of evolution, but the fact of evolution where it was animal, and at some point human, and there seems to be there's like a dichotomy. There's been something that's been said at some point. You're a human, you get the soul, you get to go to heaven, and you have free will, and then everything that comes before that doesn't. And that to me is
I understand your point. What you're saying is, look, all form of creation should have some reward or punishment. A tree, for example, you're saying that tree provided the shade. It provided so much fruits and vegetables. It should be rewarded. It should have a heavenly life, afterlife, and so on. This is the expectation you are coming up. I'm saying God can decide to continue the existence of something as long as He wants, according to His wisdom. He can have human beings forever and forever if He wishes. He can have certain creation up to that point if He wishes, for example. This is the prerogative of God, how He wants to continue the perpetual existence of certain form of creation. So the recompense, the reward or the punishment you're saying, you are expecting everything that is here in this world, even the bacteria, even the viruses. Let's talk about them. There are good bacteria in our gut that helps digestions. Are you expecting a reward for them that they should continue in the hereafter? You can bring in all of these things and you will say, I expect them to have a reward in heaven as well. So what we are saying is God in His wisdom, He has certain creation in mind to be rewarded in the hereafter. In His world of creations, for example, He can create a world in which there are other creation with other rewards, other punishment. God is constantly creating. This world of ours is one of these many worlds. So we have a companion who says there's like a parallel worlds. There are parallel prophets, parallel you over there. God can create that. But what we're dealing with is our existence, our soul. You and I know, I'm not Camille and you're not Mansur. We have our individual existence and awareness of the existence. What is there for us is a continuity of life with a given a new body of our soul, because what I am my soul with my body that can be changed and rechanged if necessary. In the hereafter will be a different body, and a mechanism to enjoy what I've done here. And that enjoyment would be spiritual, would be physical, and so on. Now, if, for example, I'm saying, look, I'm not giving you a blanket statement about animals. I am saying if there is nothing contradictory, and people wish, and even God has some, I don't know all the text. If someone can correct me, if there are texts in which there are animals can live, no problem. I don't see any problems. But I'm saying, in general, even if there wasn't a afterlife for animals, this is the prerogative of God in which any suffering they had, they will be compensated, and they will not feel in any way unjustly treated.
So I agree. I mean, you can explain away to some extent everything on that, but it is a very contrived.
Okay.
A very contrived.
I will come back with
explanation.
beneficial bacteria.
Yeah.
According to your expectation, there should be beneficial bacteria having reward. So we want now bacteria in heaven.
I'm not actually. There is an alternate explanation. The simpler explanation would be there is a God that has set up a bunch of rules, laws, and created the universe, created the things, and let them, all of them, evolve and develop according to His plans, but is not material.